מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
How good it is and beautiful to be here all together. May the peace of Shabbat be with you forever.
Adonai. Marabu, 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 Ma'asecha Adonai. Kulam bechachma asita, Kulam bechachma asita, Kulam bechachma asita, Marabu.
Welcome to CBB. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. Come on in.
We have prepared for you a meaningful religious experience.
Follow me. Come on in.
Sit back and relax.
Enjoy from your sofa.
Grab your favorite drink.
Plug in and turn on your volume.
And welcome to Erev Rosh Hashanah services.
Yaakov, Ishtenu
Hi everyone, Shana Tova, and welcome. I would like to offer some introductory thoughts, but before I do, I need to describe to you the room in which I'm standing. I'm here at CBB on the Bima, in the sanctuary, and I'm here with Cantor Childs and Rabbi Brenner and our piano accompanist, Heather, and our tech team. And through the extraordinary hard work, skill, and dedication of our tech team, this sanctuary has become a TV studio. In every other year, the room is full of human beings, and we rabbis and Cantor have been carried emotionally throughout the services, throughout the season, by the prayers of the entire community, by you. Tonight and tomorrow and throughout this season, we know that you are out there, but we cannot see you. And that is hard. But we will be thinking of you and reaching out to you to the very best of our ability. I also know that you are all basically in the same situation. You can see and hear us, but you cannot see and hear and feel the rest of the community. So I urge you, do whatever it takes to connect with each other. Call your friends in the middle of the prayers, text each other in the middle of the sermon, walk out into the street and wave to your Jewish neighbors. Send me an email, which I will answer as soon as I can. Whatever it takes, just connect. What is tonight about? This is the beginning of a 10-day journey, which ends with the final shofar on Yom Kippur. It is a journey of remembering, of praying, of singing, of thinking deeply. On Rosh Hashanah, we wish each other a sweet and healthy year, but we also ask ourselves about the meaning of our lives. How am I doing in my most important relationships? Is there someone with whom I need to speak about some deep hurt? What are my most important values? Am I living according to my own principles? Or is there something that I would like to change? This pandemic is challenging every single one of us, each of us in a different way. What am I learning from it? And where am I finding strength and clarity and love, which I need now more than ever? These are some of the questions that will guide us on our High Holy Day journey this year. I pray that each one of you will find these Holy Day services a source of strength and of renewal for yourself and for everybody that you love. And now, speaking of those that we love, I would like to call on and invite the matriarch of our community, Natalie Meyerson, to lead us in the blessing over the festival and Shabbat candles. Natalie?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivonu la'adlik ner shel Shabbat v'shel Yom Tov. Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, giving us life, upholding the life within us, and bringing us to this time.
Thank you, Natalie. And now we turn to page 11 for the Shehechianu, thanking God for keeping us alive and bringing us to this time.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. In addition to the new year, we also can't forget that we welcome in ministering angels of peace on this Shabbat evening. So let's join together in singing Shalom Alechem. The words in our Siddur and our Machzor are on page 14. Shalom Alechem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, sing together. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We turn now to page 15 and prepare to hear for the first time tonight the call of the shofar. Tik'u v'choresh shofar, b'keseh leyom chagenu, ki chok liYisrael hu, mishpat le'Elohei Yaakov. At the new moon, At the full moon, for our feast day, sound the shofar, for that is the law of Israel, the way of the God of Jacob. Hallelujah b'tekah shofar. Praise God with the blast of the shofar. And the blessing, and please join me if you've got it in front of you. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea kol teruat amo Yisrael berachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel. Hikiyah! Shkach. And now we turn to page 17 for the Hineni prayer.
אני ממוס נירש ונפחד נירש ונפחד מפחד יושב תהילות ישראל מפחד יושב תהילות ישראל באתי לעמוד ולהתחנן לפניך ולהתחנן לפניך עמך על עמך ישראל אשר
Fear. Overwhelmed and apprehensive before you to whom Israel sings praise. Although unworthy, I rise to pray and seek favor for your people Israel, for they have entrusted me with this task. Therefore, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, Adonai, Adonai, merciful, gracious God, who inspires awe, I pray to you for success on my path. I pray for myself and my community. Do not hold them responsible for my wrongs and offenses. May my deeds cause them no shame, and may their deeds cause me no shame.
Baruch atah shomea tefillah.
Continuing on page 19. Our God and God of our ancestors, may we know your blessings in the year 5781. Eternal One, bless us and the whole house of Israel with renewed life, happiness and peace, comfort and courage, resilience and strength. May the words of our heart be acceptable to you in the new year that stretches before us. We are grateful forever for the gift of life. We turn now to page 20 and we rise for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro ma'ariv aravim v'chochma poteach sharim v'vivuna mishane itim u'machalif et hazmanim u'misader et hakochavim b'mishmeroteim barki kirtzono bore yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or ma'avir yom u'mevil layla u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הערבים.
And if you're still standing, you can be seated. We're on page 25. Shema Yisrael. Hear the voice of Chana. There is no one holy as the Eternal. Truly, there is none beside you. There is no rock like our God. Shema Yisrael, hear the call of Moses. Embrace and carry in your hearts this day. In heaven above, on the earth below, Adonai is God. There is none else. Shema Yisrael, hear the words of the mystics. There is nothing but God. No place and no person is empty of God. The whole earth is suffused with God's glory. Hear, O Israel. God's hands are our hands. God's work is our work. God's voice speaks through us. God is one when we are one.
Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Page 28.
28.
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בה בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We turn now to page 32. Truth and faith. These are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source, and we are Israel, a people of God. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from its violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life, who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom. Page 34. Witnesses to this heroic might. The people thanked and praised God by name, freely accepting the reign of heaven. Then Moses and Miriam, and all Israel sang to you this song of utter joy.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norah tehilot osef eleh malchut ra'u vanecha bokei ayam lifnei Moshe Zeli anu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nehmar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 36. Bless our sleep with peace, Adonai, and awaken us to life when we rise. With power sublime, spread over us your shelter of shalom. And through your wisdom, restore us, make us whole. Let your name proclaim your presence in our lives. Be our shield. Make us stronger than the enemies we face. Illness and war, famine and sorrow, and stronger than the enemies in our hearts. Wickedness and sin. Carry us to safety as on wings. For you are the monarch of grace, the sovereign of compassion. You are the one who cares for us and sets us free. Watch over us. We who go forth to life, watch over us, that we may come home in peace, now until the end of time. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom Aleinu, yal kol amo Yisrael v'yal Yerushalayim. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and over Jerusalem. We're continuing on page 38.
ושמרו אבני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו, everybody, בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We have come now to the Amidah. This is the section of the service that we recite silently in the evening and standing. And in this prayer book, the Amidah section, goes all the way from page 42 through page 70. We're just going to take a little bit of time for silent prayer now. And I encourage you either to look through the book and let your eye fall upon one page or 2 pages and see what you find there. Or take this as a moment to get up, step outside, look up at the sky. Take this as time for prayer, for personal prayer directly between you and God. We stand now. We're on page 42.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory.
Page 66. All right, that was the first one. We'll try again, page 66.
Oh
Thank you, Maya, for that beautiful solo. And I do want to acknowledge that we're always waiting for the first tech glitch, and because we know it's coming eventually, and so we made it. It happened. We survived, and onward. So, all right, we turn now to page 245 for the prayer for healing, the Misha Berach. And tonight, as we offer the Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, we're thinking in particular and offering our prayers for Leonard Cohen, Judith Kopf, Eli Jahasi, Len Homeniak, Diane Feingold, Carol Golub, Herb Golub, Anatoly Egorov, Zahava Bat Hatun, Carrie Bradshaw, Hannah Mangus, Mary Liebman, Ivan Rowan, Tali Batbatya, and Milton Warshaw. And if you'd like to add the name of anybody else that you're thinking of who is in need of healing, please do so.
מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We turn back in our books now to page 74 and prepare for the great prayer of this season, Aveinu Malkeinu. Page 74. Feel free to read along with me if you're there at home with the book. Aveinu Malkeinu. Strong was the faith of generations before us. In exile, they proclaimed enduring hope. In the shadow of persecution, they affirmed a transcendent love and compassion. Ours is a different age, less confident and certain, more tentative in its trust. There are many who say to the works of their hands, "You are our gods." But when our worship centers on our own creations, we feel less gratitude, more doubt and despair. This is this paradox of our spiritual lives. We grow smaller in self-exaltation, nobler when we reach for you. On this night of return, let us find the humility to come close to you and open ourselves to your presence. For you are absent only when we fail to make room for you in our hearts, distant only when we turn away from you. Now, as others have done before us, let us overcome doubt and speak these words of affirmation. We call you Aveinu, as loving parent. Forgive our wrongs and failings. Accept us in our human frailty. We call you Malkeinu, as sovereign of our souls. Help us rise from our brokenness to build a world of shalom. To this vision, we offer ourselves anew. And we turn to page 77 and we rise for the open arms.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Aveinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Aveinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Ve'alol Aleinu, Ve'tapeinu.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Kol et Erev, Erev Era'av, Me'aleinu. Aveinu Malkeinu, Kol echozan, U'astin, Me'aleinu.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Aveinu Malkeinu, Kodfenu b'sefer chaim tovim. Aveinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Malkeinu, Kaddish Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu, Shema Koleinu, Shema Koleinu.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Aveinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Aveinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Aveinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Aveinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Aveinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived. Aveinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Aveinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love. We'll join together in singing Aveinu Malkeinu at the bottom of page 77.
Aveinu Malkeinu, Aveinu Malkeinu, Aveinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'hanenu, ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu. Aveinu Malkeinu, Aveinu Malkeinu.
You can be seated if you are standing. I just wanted to mention, in case any of you have not seen it yet, there's an amazing little video of a 7-year-old from South Africa singing Aveinu Malkeinu, singing that folk melody of Aveinu Malkeinu with English words, actually, and it is incredible. So just Google it, 7-year-old singing Aveinu Malkeinu, and I'm sure it'll come up, but you'll be very, very glad that you watched it. Okay, we turn now to the Kiddush, the blessing, sanctifying the day over wine. And the cantor will be leading us in the Kiddush. Rabbi Brenner has his cup of wine over there. I've got my cup of wine. So we're all ready here, and I hope that you have a cup of wine at home.
I was just going to say that. Usually we have to drink on your behalf, but tonight, go get your own cup of wine and join together, and we sing together.
Is it true that you can make Kiddush over beer?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. If that's what works for you.
ויהי ויהי בוקר יום השישי ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל עם ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום השבת הזה ואת יום הזיכרון הזה יום זיכרון תרועה בהווה מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ודברך אמת והים לעד ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל את שבת מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל everybody sing מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל ויום הזיכרון ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. L'chaim, everybody.
L'chaim.
And through the magic of Manischewitz, I turn Rabbi Cohen into Rabbi Brenner.
Wow. Shana Tova, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Before I begin my prepared sermon, I want to pause and reflect that my heart breaks tonight over the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She served this country in the Supreme Court for valiantly 27 years and dedicated her life to the pursuit of justice in all forms. There was unfortunately not time to create a tribute to Justice Ginsburg and the immense effect that she had as a role model for young women and a champion of rights for all. And regardless of our political views, none could argue her tenacity and poise as a justice was of rare quality. As I already planned to speak tonight on the issue of justice, I dedicate my words tonight to her memory. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed are you, the true judge. Over the last 6 months, nothing has dominated the American news space more than the coronavirus. It has been, without a doubt, the most important world event of 2020. But it would be hard to argue with the assertion that after coronavirus, racial injustice has been the second loudest voice in the room. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor are now household names. American cities like Portland and Seattle have been transformed. Police chiefs, politicians, presidential candidates have been forced to make statements in response to national unrest. In my nearly 32 years of life, this has been the largest response to racial injustice I have ever witnessed. And according to statistics, an estimated 15 to 26 million people took place in protests from the end of May through June, making the George Floyd demonstrations the largest in United States history. Most of these protests and demonstrations were peaceful, but not all. An estimated $500 million of property damage was caused around the country, some by white supremacist antagonizers attempting to discredit and defame Black Lives Matter, and some by the protesters themselves discrediting their own movement. It is not entirely clear if the incredible response stems from, in a time of quarantine, people had more time available to give, or because the absolutely unconscionable acts of violence perpetrated and caught on camera, followed by a completely lackluster response by authorities, sparked outrage not felt to such a degree for decades. Never before have sports leagues postponed games in response to a social justice movement. But the nights following the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, sports teams from all major leagues refused to play. Players who had been told before to just shut up and play, or in harsher translation, shut up and entertain me, cared more about that point in history than points on the scoreboard. As sports writer Katie Barnes accurately summarized, the players sent a message that no one should be able to escape the fundamental racist truths of our country. There would be no entertainment, no distraction, no justice, no peace. There has been no greater moment in my lifetime to kindle the sparks of change than right now. And I have wondered, what is my role in all of this? The national Jewish institutions have been asking the same question. What work does the Jewish community need to do in response to the tidal wave of passion and energy crashing across our country? The answer has been very clear. Before we can meet with full vigor racial injustice externally, we must address our own internal faults. We have been sinning as a community, al chet shechatanu lefanecha, and we need to make teshuvah. I'd like to introduce you to Chloe. Chloe is Black and a medical resident in Utah. Just last year, Chloe came with a friend of hers to Rosh Hashanah services here at CBB. Her friend brought her up to the bima before services to introduce us. And as I tried to be with everyone, I was warm and inviting as I welcomed her to Santa Barbara and our community. And I said, wow, you must be a good friend to get dragged to a high holiday service. Actually, she said, I'm Jewish. What I managed to gracefully and quickly say was how happy I was that she was joining us. But my heart was immediately heavy, and I sat, uncomfortable with myself, for the entire evening service. And through my sermon about how we as a community need to do a better job of welcoming young people into our community, I had automatically assumed she wasn't Jewish. And it wasn't a conscious thought. My attempt to be humorous and welcoming subconsciously added an assumption that Chloe just wasn't Jewish. I assume more often than not that people who come here are Jewish, even when they aren't. But the young black woman standing across from me couldn't have been Jewish. But she was. Just so you know, Chloe and I have since talked about this. She, gracious and understanding, she said she didn't see my comment come across in any way demeaning and fully accepted my apology. It should surprise no one, though, that Chloe's experience is not isolated. Jews of color are consistently questioned on their Jewishness based on the color of their skin. Take, for example, Angel Alvarez Mapp, a Hispanic Jew and director of programs and operations for the Jews of Color Initiative. In a talk he gave for the Aspen Institute, he described his experience as a Jew of color. The most surprising comment he made in his talk was that he never felt any form of questioning of his identity when he traveled internationally and visited communities in Europe or in American Orthodox settings. It was in the liberal Jewish institutions in the US where he would be asked, "So, what's your background?" Which he describes as a subtle way of really asking, "Are you really Jewish? And if so, how?" Angel happens to be a convert to Judaism. And many Jews of color are converts, but most are not. And even if they were, doesn't Judaism teach that a person who converts should never be made to feel as though at any point they weren't Jewish? That we never call attention to the fact that they are a convert? The subtle question of, "Tell me about your background," is entirely contrary to that principle. Perhaps the most public story of Jewish racial aggression this year, and I don't say microaggression because in no way was this story micro, was the experience of author Mara Gad at the URJ Biennial. The Reform gathering of 5,000 Jews in Chicago, where Union President Rabbi Rick Jacobs said in his opening speech that part of audacious hospitality means to be audaciously hospitable to our Jews of color. In that biennial, Mara Gad, a black Jew, was first denied her credentials because she was told that the real Mara Gad needs to come pick these up. Was confused more than once for hotel staff and asked to make sure that room service deliveries speed up. And when, after telling someone who asked what she was doing in the convention, told her that she was a featured presenter on Shabbat afternoon, was told, and I quote, "What could you possibly have to share?" My friends, we, the liberal Jewish community that espouses audacious hospitality, welcoming the stranger, tikkun olam, we are failing. I failed Chloe, and our movement is failing all Jews of color. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha. Jews of color, which, by the way, make up an estimated 15% of the American Jewish community. That's almost 1 million Jews of color in the US. And where are they? Perhaps not comfortable coming to our doors. Remember back to Charlottesville, and then to the Tree of Life shooting. On those days, we Jews knew fear, real fear. Some began to start asking questions. Should we take our mezuzah off of our front door? This was a real concern in some places of our country. We also began to ask, should we have armed security at our doors, patrolling our grounds? Many communities seriously struggled with this issue, including ours. Around this time of questions, a voice began to emerge, the voice of Jews of color, begging Jewish institutions not to add armed security to their campuses. Because unlike for many white Jews, armed security made them feel less safe. They were already profiled by the Jews inside the building as being other. How much more would they be profiled with people with guns outside the building? By and large, the national Jewish conversation did not hear these voices. Or if they did hear them, ignored them. Only now are we starting to recognize the small but important demographic of Jews of color and validate their experience in the Jewish community. Our tradition calls us to do teshuvah, and I would suggest 3 responses, 2 locally and 1 nationally, to start us along in that process. Right before Martin Luther King Jr. addressed the assembled mass at the March on Washington, Rabbi Joachim Prinz spoke these words. He said, "When I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing I learned that under those tragic circumstances was that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problem. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence. The first thing we must do as a community is actively avoid silence. We need to talk more about racial inequality and the experience of Jews of color. Race must be a topic of discussion in our homes with family and friends, and also within the walls of the synagogue. In order to accomplish this fully, we need to be more spiritually honest with certain uncomfortable truths of our Tanakh, our Jewish Bible. There is no traditional practice of reading the Tanakh in its entirety. So it's common for Jews to skip over parts like in Joshua, when the leaders of the Israelite communities place their feet on the necks of the Canaanite rulers before executing them. A scene that my chavruta suggested reminded her all too much of George Floyd. We don't recognize the verse in Isaiah chapter 45, which describes human slaves being brought to Israel in chains. Did we stop reading these sections because we are uncomfortable with how we gained our power in biblical Israel? We find this in the Torah we read as well. Like when Miriam and Aaron insult Moses' wife because she's a Cushite, often thought to mean dark-skinned. And perhaps most importantly, Sarah's treatment of Hagar, an Egyptian maidservant who gives birth to Abraham's first son before they are sent away. This story is actually the traditional Rosh Hashanah Torah reading, but the Reform movement moved away from it, opting instead to read the traditional second day reading, the binding of Isaac, on the first day. The great failure in the otherwise successful reform innovations of Judaism is that when we are faced with a difficult story, we can choose to ignore it, opt to read something else. I would suggest that the first response we can do as a community is, starting next year, begin reading the story of Sarah and Hagar as our traditional first day reading again. We must face the sins of our ancestors in the same way we must face our own sins. Tzedakah ma'avirin et ro'ah hagzerah. Justice shall temper the severe decree. In a less perfunctory and more concrete step, we can support the addition of ethnic studies to the local district curriculum. Our district has adopted new curriculum, and at the beginning of October, we'll be presenting it to the general parent community. There have been some reservations by Jewish groups to ethnic studies, and with valid concern. Some curriculum have been flawed in their political painting of Israel and exclusion of the Jewish American experience. But we nonetheless must, in our efforts to rectify the mistakes of our past, support its implementation. The Jewish community cannot afford to be on the wrong side of this. We can either be at the table trying to improve the curriculum or outside the door with no voice at all. I believe we have a responsibility to be allies to our Jewish and non-Jewish Black and Latinx friends and show our support. As we get closer to the date, I will be in communication with Dan Meisel of the ADL, and we will be putting together an informational meeting about the new curriculum and encourage you to attend. Tzedakah ma'avirin et ra'ah hagzera. Finally, on a national level, the Jewish community needs to take on the burden of urgency we felt in earlier parts of the 20th century. We had for decades been in the forefront of agency, bringing about civil rights. In 1908, Henry Moskowitz was one of the conveners of a group who met to respond to racial injustice, that group eventually becoming the NAACP. Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner were killed in the early 60s for traveling to the South to help register African Americans to vote. We now remember them in our martyrology service on Yom Kippur. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the subsequent Voting Rights Act of 1964 were written in the conference room of Reform Judaism's Religious Action Center as a joint project between Jews and Black Americans. We again must take up the mantle of allyship and partnership, even, and I would say especially, when we are not always in agreement. In recognizing the struggle of Jews of color, we must also be their allies as fellow Jews in movements such as Black Lives Matter. Tzedakah ma'avirin et ro'ah hagzera. My friends, we have teshuvah to do towards our fellow Jews of color and for the entire Black American community. We must acknowledge the emergence of the voice of Jews of color, and more importantly, embrace what they have to say. And we must return our focus to the plight of those who need our support and friendship in their struggle for equity and justice. Our sage Rabbi Hillel taught, Marbeh tzedakah, marbeh shalom. Increase justice, and you increase peace. May we strive to increase justice in our community and our country so that we might know peace in our lives and in the coming year. L'shana Tovah.
Rabbi Brenner, thank you for that powerful and inspiring sermon. We turn now to page 82 for the Aleinu, and we rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
You can be seated, and we turn to page 85. May the time not be distant, our God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when lies and bigotry shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. So may all, created in your image, become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. And it has been said, Adonai shall reign over all the earth. On that day Adonai shall be one, and God's name shall be one.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
We turn now to page 90 for the Mourner's Kaddish. As we recite the Mourner's, or before we recite the Mourner's Kaddish this evening, we'll read the names of those that we're remembering. And if you hear the name of your loved one that you're remembering, please rise when you hear your loved one's name read. And before we read the list of those that we're remembering in our community, as Rabbi Brenner mentioned, we're all thinking of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her family. I'm sure that her family has not had the funeral yet, so we're not technically reading her name for Kaddish, but we do mention her. We have her in mind. And tonight we are in the period of Shiva, the first week of mourning for Dave Halpern. That's the husband of Vicky and the father of Dara Goldine. And also in the period of Shiva for Esther Licha. That's the mother of Alan Licha. We're in the first month of mourning, the period of Shloshim for Carol Pasternak, Joe Kushner, Martin Cohen, and Donna Basson. And we're in the first 11 months of saying Kaddish for John Ackerman, Dorothy Cohen, Karen Pelletier, Joshua Solomon, Faye Manger, George Merkin, Achi Pastor, Maury Seidler, Seal Gordon, Jerry Mintz, Mort Morrison, Myra Taub, Bonnie Gordon, Emily Barron, and Tamar Nachmias. And we're observing the art site, the anniversary of the passing of Robert Burke, Gabriella Cooper, Sharon Metrick Cunningham, Benno Furman, Milton Gelberg, Jack Gershow, Jack Gold, Sam Lipschitz, Leon Lowenschus, Nieta Lowenschus, Nat Marsh, May Mass, Leo Meyerson, Rose Miller, Jack Nadell, Mark Phillips, Aaron Patel, Heinz Pulverman, Marty Rosenthal, Sarah Schoen, Marilyn Shevitz, Freddie Solomon, Nathan Stein, Minna Stone, Marcia Turman, and Leona Weinthal. And now if you'd like to mention the name of anybody else that you're remembering this evening, please do so. And if your custom is to rise for the Mourner's Kaddish, please feel comfortable to rise. If your custom is to remain seated, please remain seated. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 90. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirute, v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yamechon, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה, בריחו, לעילה ולעילה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. At this point, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our congregation's wonderful president, Diane Zipperstein, to give us some words from the presidency. Diane.
Shana Tova. Well, this has been one interesting year. We're in the middle of the pandemic of our generation. Thank you to all of our healthcare providers and essential workers who have put your lives on the line helping the rest of us during this crisis. In mid-March, we halted our active lives in the hope that we could quell the run of COVID-19. CBB, while suspending in-person gatherings, quickly pivoted to provide a virtual synagogue to all. Through the heroic efforts of our caring community volunteers and others, we reached out to all and continue to assist our community. I'm so proud of how we've helped, offering financial, spiritual, and social support to many. In addition, CBB developed an expansive range of educational programming, providing courses exploring many Jewish holidays, examining Israel's history, geography, and culture, and arranging COVID information sessions with our own medical community. Our teachers for these programs and for recurring sessions like meditation, Musar, and Dream Council are our own congregants who have stepped up to help us all fight our fears and malaise. Our community also has rallied to raise funds for those less fortunate, generously giving to our COVID-19 emergency fund. To date, we have provided over $50,000 in assistance to help with food, housing, and medical care. These High Holy Days, we're trying to address hunger in the greater community as well. Please help support both these efforts if you can. We are gradually opening our doors. In July, our preschool reopened to the delight of many young families and now has more students than ever before. Jewish learning programs will begin in October in a highly designed program blending virtual and in-person experiences. Our B'nai Mitzvahs are going forward, limited in scope but in person, allowing our young people the extraordinary experience of reading from the Torah. In addition, we've managed to hold some life cycle events like a bris, a memorial service, and Shiva Minyanim. Our task force on reopening has been working hard to get us as much in-person community as is allowable by law and consistent with our values. It's a difficult job, and we appreciate their time and dedication in navigating the many complexities of reopening. Over these 7 months, COVID has brought many people to our doors seeking solidarity and friendship. Rather than being weakened by COVID, we are stronger thanks to the incredible hard work of clergy, staff, and congregants. Though not in person, in many ways we are closer now than ever before. Let us harness this new level of engagement to build a better tomorrow for our congregation. Nearly a century ago, a group of Santa Barbara Jews decided to form a synagogue and began Congregation B'nai B'rith. 50 years ago, CBB started its new chapter on San Antonio Creek Road. Now it's our turn to shape the future of our congregation. Lador Vador. In October, we will reveal our vision for reimagining our campus. This project, which we've named Building Dreams, began 6 years ago with an examination of our master plan. Our focus is not on growth, but on utilizing our campus to the fullest extent possible and addressing the numerous challenges our beautiful campus presents. We want flexible spaces and comprehensive accessibility. We don't want to just replicate classrooms, but instead create spaces for dynamic and creative learning for children and adults alike. We're not interested in creating a palace. We want a home that offers better access for those with mobility challenges, that embraces our expansive outdoor spaces and reimagines education. This new vision will reflect our dedication to learning, our love of our beautiful environment, and our spirit of inclusion. We're not flashy and superficial. We are warm and deep and true. This project will reflect who we are. Please stay tuned for an announcement in October. Thank you for your steadfast support. Wishing you all good health in the new year. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. And Diane, thank you so much. I hope everybody understands how profoundly fortunate we are to have Diane as the leader of our congregation right now, as our president. She didn't know, obviously, and none of us knew, but she had no idea that we would be going through something like this pandemic during her presidency. And she has been a extraordinarily intelligent, passionate, compassionate leader for our congregation during this time. And I personally am so grateful, and I think we all are. Thank you, Diane. And thank you for that very beautiful and inspiring message. All right. Just a couple of announcements about what's coming up. Tomorrow morning, our service is at 10:30. And you'll just arrive here at this by means of a link, or whatever way. I know that there were different ways that people managed to watch the service tonight. All of those ways are still possible.
Can I just chime in here
Please.
really quick? Can I just chime in that no matter what happens, whenever I get here on high holidays, there's always somebody parked in my parking space.
Did that happen tonight?
Yes.
No kidding.
Can you believe that? All right, back to what you were saying, Rabbi.
Thank you for that important announcement, Cantor. So tomorrow morning, 10:30, that service includes the shofar service, and as well as the Torah reading, and we'll be having segments of the Torah reading read by different teens from our community and blessings by different members of our community. And then on Sunday, I think you're aware, there is a community tashlich down at Ledbetter Beach, I think. And it's being organized by the Federation. The Federation has taken on responsibility because it is a community-wide, Jewish community-wide event. It will be completely socially distant, so there will be no gathering per se, but I know that a lot of people will be going down to Ledbetter Beach between the hours of 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock on Sunday. So that is the ritual of casting breadcrumbs into the water, symbolic of casting off the sins of the old year. So that's Sunday afternoon, second day of Rosh Hashanah. I want to thank our tech team, is there going to be a credits rolling? Okay, great. So watch the credits to see all of their names. But this was kind of like a bar mitzvah for us. For me, at least. I felt as nervous as I did on my bar mitzvah day, if not more so. And it was only because of the strong support of our tech team, and of course, our cantor, Rabbi Brenner, and Heather. Thank you so much.
And I dare say that this is the first time you've worn a suit in the past 6 months.
Pretty darn close. Pretty darn
Me
close.
too.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll come in my sandals. All right, our final song is Adon Olam, page 94.
Sing along with us, everybody. Adon Olam
אשר מלך בטרם כה יציר נברא ליד נשא וחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצורך לי ביצרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום מקרא בידו הפקיד רוחי בידי שם ויעירה ועם רוחי גבייתי אדוני לי ולא יירא.
L'shana tova tikatevu v'techatemu. May you and everybody that you love be written and sealed in the book of life for a good, sweet, healthy year to come. A happy new year. Shana tova.
Shana tova, everybody. Let's roll those credits.
Let's